she awakes every morning with the plan never to fall in love again. You see, the involuntary act of falling is something no one ever intends on doing, so she waits patiently for that imperfect mate whose silhouette overshadows her hate for once falling in love with him. You see, she once lost her footing, tripped and fell in love with him, and she severed her purpose down to the very bone. And the concrete of companionship, it scraped her soul so much that it can no longer hold on its own, so it ties. Her soul ties with his in search of a healing home. Controlled by only gravity, her arms never stretched out to break her fall, yet they reached out to embrace his ideas. And the years she spent developing her own self-image now fused together and trickled down her cheeks in the form of her own tears. She suffocated her future, wrapped it in a plastic bag after she choked it, until her purpose and also her future both fell to the floor and became a doormat for him to walk on. Now, her steps moved to the beat of his steps, because in her eyes, his steps carried just a little bit more weight, but her steps were once ordered by God and God alone. And fractured limbs no longer have enough strength to carry her to her next level, so she lied there in a puddle of her own blood, screaming SOS from her bloody lips, perhaps waiting on an innocent bystander to tell her that her worth is determined by God and not in the shape of her hips. You see, from man's rib, God created she. Perhaps from he, God should have taken not one, but three ribs, because he was just a third of a man who refused to plan to give her any validation. So for her, there was no consolation, no motivation. If only she knew the fascination in God's consideration in her creation, then maybe faith. The same faith that can move mountains would repair the punctured lungs that had her once gasping for the very air that God blew into her. 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8 is embedded in every woman's DNA. Bearing, believing, hoping, and enduring all things. But if God is love, and loving a man, there should be a threefold cord, with God being the strongest string. But women love hard. So hard that once love has been broken into 1,000 pieces, they find themselves scrambling, searching for themselves, failing to realize that they are part of God's own thesis. You see, the misconstrued concept of what God can do have women trying to repair themselves with tape and glue, no clue of what God had really called them to be. So they lie there waiting on someone like you and me. But tell me, how do you tell someone who sees no reflection that she was made in the image of God? How do you mend her broken wings? How do you tell her that she is a queen when every man she ever dealt with was never worthy enough to be considered a king? We tell her that God creates only masterpieces and nothing less. He's the master potter, he's the best. He's the only one who is capable, able, and worthy enough to put a price tag on you, because he's the boss. So if you ever want to know what your worth is, don't rely on the opinion of man. Just look at the cross.